Well, the votes have been counted. Joe Biden has won the Michigan primary. Joining us in the studio this morning to talk about what this means and really what's next before the big election in November. Professor and chair of the political science department at Oakland University, Dave Dulio. Dave, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
We always enjoy hearing from you. So tell us about what happened yesterday, and was this what we expected to happen?
I think it was what we expected to happen. Big decisive victory for Vice President Biden, if anything larger than what might have been predicted prior to. He wins Michigan by 20-some points, and it's a resounding victory. He expands his delegate lead, which is really the most important thing that comes out of yesterday here in Michigan. And it really is all about what's next. What does the vice president do, and more importantly, what does Bernie Sanders do?
So obviously it's a two-horse race now. At some point, the voters that are supporting Sanders are going to have to jump to Biden, or the Biden are going to have to jump to Sanders. Is one camp more likely to do that than the other?
I don't think so. I think that there are, well, frankly, the Democratic Party is still divided. Right, it's still divided between the moderate wing, or the relatively moderate wing with Joe Biden in that lane, and the progressive wing with Bernie Sanders. And I think that as long as Sanders is in the race, those folks are going to stick with him. They are loyal to their candidate.
Yeah. Michigan was the big win, obviously. Yesterday, what measurement is this for where the country is going? Is it thought that the way that the Michigan election turns out, is that an indicator for what Ohio will do next week and down the line?
That's a good question. I think in many cases, states are their own entities, right? And what happens here might be repeated, at least in places like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, that are similar to Michigan demographically, occupationally, but in other places, say Florida, it's off the it's off the rails, right? I mean,
right.
In terms of comparisons.
So big picture stuff. I mean, Joe Biden has got all the momentum, and it would seem that some experts are saying that this might be time for Bernie to drop out when we talk about timing to sort of shift his supporters to Joe Biden. What do we know about that potentially happening before the next primary?
Well, we'll see. And I think that nobody knows except Bernie Sanders. I think that it's in, frankly, the Democratic Party's best interest for him to do that. We are scheduled to have a debate between Sanders and Biden on Sunday in Arizona, ahead of their primary, along with Florida, Ohio, and Illinois, which
that
are all.
That debate can be damaging,
it
right?
Absolutely can, and that's Bernie Sanders' last best hope, I think, of shaking up the race. So he may want to stay in it just to see if he can have the race reshuffle after that debate, because we've seen that happen previously, just in the last month or so, when Mike Bloomberg imploded in a debate in Nevada, and his support sort of fell through the floor, right? And that was it. So, and the vice president has a history of putting his foot in his mouth, and that might be Bernie Sanders' best chance.
Is there any chance that there could be some wild card thrown in when it comes to the Democratic National Convention? Like when we get to that point, anything?
So it's always possible, right? But if Vice President Biden goes to the convention with enough delegates already secured, enough pledged delegates who have to go there and vote for him on the first ballot, and the number he needs is 1991, and he's still far away from that, to be honest about it. But if he goes to the convention with 1991, it's over.
What goes on behind the scenes in terms of, as much as you can tell us, in terms of Elizabeth Warren waiting to endorse a candidate, Kamala Harris coming out? It's so long after she had dropped out of the race to finally endorse Biden. Are they trying to see what positions they can maybe get in a cabinet position or a VP spot?
Everything's political.
Right.
Right, and there's a political angle to everything. There are self-interests at play. There are deals to be made. I mean, I think we are kidding ourselves if we're not, if we don't talk about that and honest about it. So I think that you see some Democrats line up behind Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris is a good example. She was very critical of the vice president early on, maybe one of his biggest detractors during those early debates, yet she comes and falls in line, right? And I think that that's because the Democratic Party wants to try and coalesce around their best chance to beat President Trump in November. And quite frankly, that's Joe Biden and not Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, some people putting their own egos or their own platforms aside and putting the party first. We'll see if it pays off. Dave Giulio, thank you so much.
My pleasure, anytime.
It's an interesting time.
It is. And not many agree on politics, but most of us do agree on the show Love Is